Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 296. I was black here, my opponent played e4, and I went with e5, and I decided to play a normal move here instead of f5, the Latvian gambit. And my opponent played the unusual move here, he played bishop e2. So this is the well, I just call it a king's pawn opening. It's a very quiet setup. If the colors were reversed, if black were playing bishop e7, then it would be called the Hungarian defense. So you might think of this as a Hungarian defense with colors reversed. And looks like I played the main move here, knight f6, just challenging the undefended pawn. And white defends. So he's got a setup here, and it looks like the best way to challenge the setup is just to play the immediate d5. And with colors reversed, d4 is often the right idea, so it makes sense here. If black can play d5 and get away with it, it's usually a good thing to try in these king's pawn openings, just as a general rule. And it looks like, well, the engine thinks it basically equalizes. So that would have been a good way to play. I was thinking of something different, though. I was thinking of a slower plan, where I get my bishop outside the pawn chain and have some advantage with this bishop outside the pawn chain. And so I played the move h6 because when the bishop is outside the pawn chain, this pin on the knight is sometimes pretty awkward. So I play that to stop the pin. And so it's not like I'm playing badly here. It's just that more direct d5 would have been the better way to play. Knight c3. So we go along, I would say, in pretty normal channels for a while. Bishop b4 pinning, bishop d2 breaking the pin, castles. Now a3 kicking the bishop, and I decide I want to keep the bishop. Cancel that. I didn't retreat here. I didn't think the bishop was necessarily doing anything good on this diagonal, so I just immediately went to the c5 diagonal here, looking at f7. And I could have, I guess, considered bishop to d4, but I just dropped it back to b6. The bishop would probably get traded off there. Would still be an okay position, I guess. But it's nice to keep this bishop for the long run. This can be a powerful piece on this diagonal. But the problem is I don't really get to keep it for the long run because white has various ways of capturing that bishop with his knight. I really can't prevent that. So he goes with knight d4. Although I could have played, and I guess I considered this during the game, I could have just taken this. So let's take a look at this. And that probably would have been best. E takes, knight takes. I didn't like this because I'm losing the e-pawn. But if he takes the e-pawn right away, is there a problem with that? Bishop d4. Oh, there is a problem. That's interesting. So that pawn is somewhat indirectly protected. Okay, so I missed that during the game. That definitely would have been the best way to play at this point. If since he's given me the opportunity to snap off his knight, I can keep my good bishop, and since he can't really take the pawn, since he can't really grab the e-pawn because of the fork. Let's see, the other thing I was thinking about here is that, okay, yeah, my knight is out of hock. Yeah, I was just worried about losing that pawn. Okay, so I just got to calculate a little deeper in cases like that. So I played the inferior move, knight d4. Still okay, I think, but not the best. But I'm not. It's not like I'm losing or anything. But this leaves me with a bit of a messed up pawn structure, and white is still somewhat cramped. And this is my advantage: is this advanced pawn here cramps his structure. But he has the bishop pair in the long run. That'll be an advantage for white. And right here I played, white played the move c3, just challenging. Looks like castling is a good move here. After c3, apparently right now I have the opportunity to play d5. Another move I also consider. This is a very desirable move to try and break up the center, but I wasn't sure it worked in these circumstances, because after d5, let's take a look at this, not played, e5, and now, whoa, here's what I missed during the game, is I don't have to move my knight immediately. I can take the pawn, hitting his bishop, and when he takes back, I can push my pawn forward, hitting his bishop again, and when the bishop retreats, then I have this move, knight to d5. Let's see, even if the bishop goes to, suppose the bishop drops back to b2. Can I still play knight d5? Knight d5. I mean, because it loses the pawn here. But maybe there's a trap. Knight f4. Okay, yeah, knight f4 is a nice move. So there, you know, I knew there would be a discovered attack on the bishop, but it also hits this light squared pawn over here that the bishop can't defend. So both of these attacks can't be defended. So either way, regardless of where the bishop goes after I push my pawn forward to d4, I can play the move knight to d5. And so I get my knight away from this pawn where it was hanging, and I get a decent position by clearing out this square on d4 for the knight, on d5, right? Before that, if we look at the position as I was imagining it after the exchange, well, I was imagining that I'd play d5, he'd play e5, and I would have to move my knight immediately. So taking, and pushing, and giving my knight a square here. Now in this position, the knight doesn't have any good squares. That's covered by a pawn, that's covered by a bishop, it's covered, so it would have to go back to this square, and that's not somewhere you really want to go to, blocking your bishop or some of these squares back here. Not good squares. So, so anyway, I avoided that, and I played the move instead, c5, just trying to hold on to my pawn here. And now, so after this move, white's a little bit better. And probably with good play could go on to win this game, but still we're not, oh, cancel that, he didn't take right away. He played c takes d4. Okay, best way to play. And yeah, you can see now why white is better. I've got two sets of doubled pawns. Pretty ugly looking pawn structure. So white just castled here. It's a good move. And d5 is, again, a move I wanted to play, but I didn't think it was working. And now I don't have these tricks with taking on c3 anymore. So d6 was played. I was thinking maybe I can build up to d5, but I want to get my bishop out first. My opponent goes with b5, and I develop the bishop to e6. Now b5 seemed to give away a lot of the advantage. What is the engine recommending here? Bishop to c1. That's kind of interesting. Probably with the idea of rerouting the bishop, put some pressure on the d-pawn, which is, this is a problem with this position, is this pawn is basically lost. It's really hard for me to defend. It's on a dark square, and so I don't have a bishop that defends it. The knight is a long way away from being able to protect it, and the queen and rooks can't protect it because there's this pawn on d6 in the way. So the pawn on d4 is pretty much a goner. But my opponent played b5, and so I develop bishop to b4, going after this pawn, which is a little easier for me to defend. And I play rook e8. It's not hanging just yet. I've just also, I still want to keep the option of pushing d6 to d5 and undermine his center here. And now my opponent went h3, and now I push on with d5, which is my plan. So this is okay. He goes e5 here. I drop my knight back to d7, and he puts his bishop on d6. Kind of an interesting place to put the bishop, but it's not clear if it has a whole lot to do here. I play bishop f5, immediately putting pressure on the e-pawn, and my opponent goes bishop g4, challenging my bishop. And right here, I should just go ahead and take that pawn, or perhaps trade bishops and take the pawn. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't do that. I thought bishop takes, queen takes. You know, I had some kind of a misunderstanding here. I was thinking when the queen comes out, it would defend the pawn, but that's not the case at all. So bishop takes, queen takes, I can take the pawn. Well, the queen can grab this pawn, so it's not like I'm winning a pawn, but at least I unwind one of my weaknesses there. So even if I hadn't seen knight e5, that bishop takes idea is interesting. So, but knight e5 works here. I mean, my bishop is hanging, but so is his bishop, and I've just won a pawn here. So that would be a good way to play. Instead, I played queen to g5, trying to put some pressure and force him to exchange and keep his queen from coming out. But this turns out to be good for white. He can play f4 here and defend his pawn. And so now Now I'm just in a bit of an awkward spot. This pawn is no longer hanging. I didn't grab it while I had the chance, and now the opportunity is gone, as so often happens. So I try and, for another plan, I try and get my knight active and maybe put some pressure on the d3 pawn there. And my opponent did me a real favor here, and by taking the knight out. He could try, let's see, queen f3. Yeah, just for white to continue developing is probably a good idea. But instead he exchanged off the knight. And now I have this group of pawns in the center, which gives me some very interesting counter chances. The engine rates this as dead even, but I would kind of like to play black. I mean, certainly white has chances in this position, particularly because of his advanced center pawns. But I like that mass of pawns in the center that black has in this position. Anyway, my opponent goes with a4, and I play b6, holding up his queenside pawns so that I'm free to push these central pawns. He goes queen to b3, and he's abandoning the king side a little bit. I get rook e to d8. He is attacking my d pawn. I have to defend it. And then he plays rook to a2. So I'm not sure what that idea was. Maybe he's going to double his rooks somewhere along the second rank. Maybe bring it over to f2 is his plan. So I went rook a to c8. And this pawn was doubly defended, and my rook on the a file was not doing anything more. And I still want to push these pawns through the center. And I couldn't do it immediately with the queen there. But my opponent plays g4 here, kicking my queen. And then he plays rook c2. So that was his idea, was to bring a rook over here to defend against the onrush of my central pawns. So right here, well, okay, I didn't have to play it here. h5 is already an idea here. h5 is something I should definitely be considering in this position, because he's abandoned his king a little bit, and he's weakened his kingside pawn structure, and I have by just pushing these pawns. And so I have a chance to counterattack and disrupt over here, and I should probably be doing that. I was still thinking about the central break, which still doesn't work, so I'm trying to set it up with rook c7, double the rooks on the c file, and then be able to push the c pawn. And then he plays queen a2, and I go rook d to c8, doubling, preparing that push, and he goes rook f to c1, stopping me. And now, right again, h5 is a good idea. But c4 is still an okay move, and the chess engine had that as one of the top choices. I finally prepared this break, and it's not really good for him to take. So this is what I had calculated. If he takes, I can push on immediately with d3. I hadn't calculated that. I had calculated this exchange. Okay, apparently this is good too. D takes, I mean rook takes, rook takes, rook takes, and then queen takes, and then I push on. And I just think it's going to be a little bit hard for him to get his queen in front. He has to go to this square. And I was thinking, you know, he's a pawn up here because he's got 2 extra pawns, and I have this 1 extra pawn. So he's a 1 pawn up. But my queen, I can just get my queen in here, and it's going to be very difficult for black to defend this, for white to defend this. Maybe I was a little too optimistic. Let's see. What does the chess engine says? It's more accurate to play queen d4 check first, king to f1, and g5. Yeah, so that's not g5. g5, queen e3 or g5. I was thinking here. So that's queen e3. Just because you want to have this thread of the queen coming here, that keeps white tied down, and it's also attacking a pawn. So I can grab some of these pawns here. So advantage to white, not as decisive as I hoped. Advantage to black. But I guess I missed in those exchanges. It looked like it was even stronger to pause and push d3 here while I still have a queen and a rook. It looks like that's just winning. So a well-timed push of this passed pawn would win there. So my opponent wisely decided not to trade and played queen a3. And now here's where I make my maybe my final mistake. Once again, I should play h5 here. go after undermining the kingside pawn structure, and just leave this in the center. This is there's tension here, but as we saw, it's not good for white to take, because that just gives me a passed pawn, which becomes too strong. So I can just leave the tension. When I push this, I thought this was giving me a protected passed pawn, which is really an excellent thing to have in the endgame, but we're not yet in the endgame, and there's one move that I completely missed, which is queen b4. Hitting my d-pawn, which is undefended and can't be defended. It's the same old problem. I've got the double d-pawns and the one in front. Cannot be defended. There's just no way to get there. I need to get my queen on a dark square to defend it, and it's not happening. So white is now better after a period where he was somewhat worse. So I go for the kingside counterplay. Finally, I realize I've gotten in trouble over here, and I need to stir up trouble somewhere else before I just lose. So he grabs the pawn. Good choice. I take. Takes back. He should probably not take back, because I get a nice check out of here. It says white can continue by playing queen takes b6. Grabbing this pawn, that's pretty ambitious. Not something I would think of, because now I get a passed pawn near his king, but I guess he can be stopped. Anyway, so he played h takes g4, grabbing this pawn, and now I take with check. And now, okay, we're back in the range of even, because I have some counterplay here. He plays rook g2, chasing my queen away, and I went queen f3. Yep, so we're still in the range of even. Queen b6, he grabs a pawn over here. And now, I have a choice of taking either of these two pawns. And one of them is clearly better than the other, although it's still not entirely clear to me why. But it's better for me to take this pawn. I guess because it weakens his outpost on D. That's the E pawn, right? He's got an advanced pawn on E5 here, and by taking on F4, I'm weakening that. So I chose this pawn, thinking, well, it'd give me this pair of passers, and that would surely count for something. But he can push on with e6. This is a bit awkward. Let's see. Although it's not the best move. Best move is just a5. So the chess engine thinks it's still even here. And e6 thinks is not particularly good, but I have to play precisely here to... well, what I chose was wrong. I chose f takes e6. So it's not that I have to play so precisely. It's just that I have to ignore this pawn and continue with my own plan. So he can take here with check. I take back with the rook. Yeah, I guess the rooks are defending. Okay, so I should have not wasted time taking this pawn and just pushed on with my own plan. So maybe this is my final mistake of the game, that I took the pawn. He takes with check. Yeah, and now I'm in big trouble after that. And I immediately drop a rook, but it looks like I'm losing already anyway. If you look at the engine evaluation, even with the best move, I'm in big trouble. It's a combination of the king being exposed, and also he has two passed pawns over here on the queen side, and I can't stop everything. So I went with rook f7, but that just drops the rook. So there were a few more moves. Let's just play them out. It's a nice, a pretty nice attack here he got, and there's just nowhere for me to go. I kept finding some good moves here. King to e6, just driving me. And then queen e5 check, yeah, that gives that his best. And then right here he plays queen takes c3, grabbing a pawn. The engine likes rook e1. Yeah, just bring the rook over, get your last piece into the attack, and finish me off. That's the quickest finish. But this worked too, because after this I resigned, because I don't have anything better than trading queens and being a rook down and a pawn with no immediate threats of passed pawns or anything. It was pretty hopeless. So I resigned here. Interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.